All right.
All right. Oh my
Oh
God.
my gosh. There we are.
We're here. We're live, folks.
We
Yep.
are
Quinn, thank you
live.
so much for joining us, by the way.
Yeah, no problem. It's gonna
Super
be
exciting to
awesome.
have you here. If you're in the chat, say hello. Tell Quinn how much you love him.
Hello, chat. How's everybody? How's it going?
All right, folks. So here's the game plan. We're going to do a little bit of an intro here.
Hmm.
We're going to treat this sort of like a bit of a live episode recording. But obviously, we want to be interacting with the chat, so please be popping off in there. Drop any questions you have about Dune Prophecy, any comments about the conversation, and we'll do our best to try and include them in today's episode. The hope is to make this a little more low key than our more structured, scripted episodes in the past, and to interact with our listeners and viewers. So let me kick it off with a quick intro,
Hmm.
and then we'll get into it. Welcome to Gom Jabbar, your guide to the iconic world of Dune. We'll be exploring the themes, philosophies, and characters found in the sandy depths of this vast universe, from Frank Herbert's groundbreaking novels to the adaptations on film and TV. My name's Abu,
My name is Leo.
and
I'm
folks,
Quinn.
yes, we're joined
Yeah.
by Quinn again.
Woo!
Quinn, we've seen so much of you this week, and frankly, it's not enough. On today's bonus live episode, Leo, Quinn, and I are going to be answering your Dune Prophecy questions, specifically about Dune Prophecy Episode 1, which is the one that's out right now. And we have a couple of questions we've already selected that we scoured the internet for that we're going to try and touch on. But of course, we're going to be interacting with the live chat here on YouTube. So if you have questions or thoughts, make sure you drop them in the chat so that we can call them out and address them. A super quick reminder before we jump in that you can also participate if you're listening or watching this live stream after the fact. You can
Hmm.
participate in these live recordings every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Sorry to our West Coast folks. I know that's a early morning. Hope you're a morning person. We'll be live on the Lord Party YouTube channel. And if you're wondering where all of that stuff is, don't worry. Check the description below. Links will be there for you.
Indeed, they will. All right. Let's talk about prophecy.
Let's do it.
I
Dune
I am
Prop.
I am curious for you two. We've now had a few days to sit with the episode. We've had some
Yeah.
time to sit with the episode. Have your feelings about the episode changed dramatically in the last like week or so?
Not for me. I feel like I basically feel the same way where I thought it was like a decent start, but
Hmm.
like it could go either way. I mean, this could either be like a really entertaining show that satisfies like both audiences. You know, it grabs like the normal people that don't really know about Dune, and it grabs like the Dune fans, and it grabs the people that are kind of in between, and it does enough things to satisfy all of them to the point where it's a successful show and it's viewed as good. Or it could just be like a flop. It could just be like
Yeah.
it could fizzle out, and I can't tell by the first episode if it's going to continue being like great and build upon like the good things in the first episode, or if it's going to become like one of those mini shows that like has a decent premise but then just kind of like falls short of like ultimately what was expected. It just won't give what needed to be give
Mm.
to the highest degree of giving.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Abu?
I agree. My feelings have not changed a whole lot. In fact, we've had a ton of conversations. You know, Quinn, we were on your stream for like 3 hours the other night
Which was so
talking
much
about it
fun.
with all
It was
shift X.
great.
So much
Yeah,
fun. It was
so much
such a
fun.
great time.
And
I was
nerd
geeking out about
cookies.
it.
And nerd cookies. Don't
And Nerd
forget her.
Cookies as well. Yeah,
Elaine's
it was
great.
such a good group.
Yeah.
We talked so much about it. Obviously, Quinn, you came on our podcast episode from this week, our deep dive breakdown. We talked about it there. I've been doing nothing but like scouring Reddit and Twitter for hot takes and thoughts.
Yeah.
I talked about it at work. Like I also
Mhm.
podcast at work, and so we covered Dune at work, and I just talked about it with coworkers on an episode there. So I literally every single day, I have done nothing but talk about Dune Prophecy.
Mm.
But I don't think my feelings have changed all that much. What I said in our podcast episode and then again on your stream, Quinn, I think I still feel the same.
Mhm.
How about you, Leo? Any changes in your emotions?
You know, I think we've all kind of picked up on some of the deep lore cuts, like the deep cut references that they had in the first episode, and Abu, you and I got to talk with the executive producer and showrunner yesterday, and from talking with them, I feel like I like it a lot more now. And I think I already liked it. I was already very on board. I'm realizing I'm pretty easy. I'm pretty like, it's just like, it's fun. The characters are good. There's good stuff happening. There's little moments, of course, that I still don't love. I rewatched the first episode a couple times, and like, yeah, the club scene does feel generic. I still feel that. I still feel like the soundtrack is too present, but it feels less like, especially after our conversation yesterday, it feels less like they just opened the book and like grabbed random words and then tried to like slap those into a generic script. And it feels more like they are creating this thing as fans of Dune and doing their best. And that can hit or miss. To your point, Quinn, we don't know what the satisfyingness of the 6-episode arc is. It is, from the perspective of like deep sci-fi content creators, it is really hard to make good content that is engaging for people who've loved this stuff for 35 years, and also people who just like think Timothée Chalamet's hot and heard that there are worms and are like, cool, like now we're talking about mommies, like sign me up. That's a very different type of
To be clear, that's also me.
It's also
fall in
me.
both categories, right?
Yeah.
I know from the first episode that they cared about what they were making. So I feel like that says a lot, because a lot of stuff gets made today, and to varying degrees of caring. And I feel like this isn't something that's made haphazardly. It doesn't feel like it's something that was just like slapped together and they're saying just like put the Dune name on this and we'll make a bunch of money. It does seem like it's people that care about what they're creating. So that's why I have optimism for this show.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we have a great question from Philip in the chat that I want to throw up on screen here because I think it opens up an interesting conversation. Whoops, wrong question. Let me the other one. I'll get to you next, Tomas. Philip says, should we expect an action-packed climax towards the end of season 1? I haven't read Sisterhood of Dune, so I have no idea what happens. And again, he's referencing Sisterhood of Dune, the Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson prequel novel that this show is very loosely based on.
Sisterhood of Dune is not going to help you with knowing. As for like the climactic scene, it seems like it from the trailer, there's going to be some kind of climactic thing that's happening. I mean, I saw the little. I want to know what Valia's doing, like when she's slicing throats. She's like slicing the guy's throats. Like that looks cool, and it looks like Desmond is building soldiers and they're gathering up for some conflict, just based on the trailer. So I don't know. It seems like probably.
Yeah, that's also been a conversation I've been having all week of people going, should I read Sisterhood of Dune? Is that going to help? And luckily, no, you don't have to. Because like that first 30-year forward thing basically leaves a lot of it behind. I am seeing for sure some like common threads between the book and this, and maybe we can use those. But even Sisterhood of Dune doesn't have a climactic ending. It's sort of a midway point in the school's trilogy. So what do we think is going to happen at the end of the, like, what do we think if there is a climax, like a big climax? Predictively, we don't know any better than other folks. What do we think is going to happen at the end?
I think what we're seeing play out over these 6 episodes is a Valia versus Desmond story. And that to me is especially clear because, again, Leo, you and I interviewed the showrunner yesterday, and Allison Chapker, the showrunner, she very much was like, our through line, our sort of core mission with this first season of the show was to tell Valia Harkonnen's story.
Okay.
And so I think we're going to see Desmond be sort of our antagonist, our sort of foil character, and Valia and Desmond are going to butt heads. And then I suspect Desmond is going to die by the end of the season. Are we going to get some action-packed, like Marvel Act 3 CGI heavy fight scene? I don't think so. I think
On your left, Valia,
subtle.
and then Tula comes through a portal.
Exactly, right. I don't think that's going to happen, but I suspect we're going to get a lot of politicking and a lot of backstabbing, and my prediction, having not seen any future episodes, is that Desmond will die by the end of this season. This is the Valia versus Desmond arc.
I think they'll, I don't know about a battle climax, but I think there'll at least be like one or two like militaristic style like battle sequences, because they're like talking about the Fremen and the Ricci
Yeah.
soldiers and the Emperor's problems on Arrakis. So there's going to be some action, but yeah, like you said, it's not going to be the focus. It's not going to be like
Yeah.
it's not going to be the big moment that everything is leading up to.
Right.
Yeah.
And as far as the books go, we talked about this on your stream, Quinn. You don't really have to read Sisterhood to understand this show. Like, as far as, like,
No.
quote unquote, what homework do I have to do before I watch Dune Prophecy? Just watch the Villeneuve films and read Dune by Frank Herbert, I
Absolutely.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you really want to go deep, like, read all 6 of Frank's books, because Heretics and Chapter House really get into the inner workings of the Sisterhood, and Prophecy is very focused on the inner workings of the Sisterhood.
Yeah.
I feel like with this show that they didn't want you to have to read the Brian Herbert stuff. That's why I feel like, I mean, it's in there, but they're kind of divorcing themselves from it in a way. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's interesting. They want
Yeah,
people that just
definitely.
watch the movies to be able to go into this and know exactly what's going on. Well, maybe not exactly, but to be able to understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree too. I don't think there's going to be some giant battle like climax. It's funny though, because Quinn, you're right. There's that sequence in the trailer of Valia like slitting throats as she just like walks through, and it's like, God damn, like she actually gets into some action, and that'll be very interesting. Maybe we'll see the inception of weirding combat. Maybe we're going to see some like cool Bene Gesserit, battle prowess. There's also that scene, that flickering scene in the trailer of, I think it's Kieran and maybe Inez doing some like back-to-back sword fighting against some people, like maybe
Oh,
uh
yeah.
it's there's probably going to be some good action set pieces coming up, but it does kind of feel like, if there is, we've talked a lot about like whether Desmond's powers are psychic or technologically based. I feel like if this series is telling the story of Valia versus Desmond, the final climactic scene is going to be Valia disarming whatever Desmond is and does, and winning outright, or winning but at what cost, and then being on the wrong side of history or something like that. But it does feel like Desmond's going to die, and his death is going to be driven by some maybe deeper reveal about him and her mastery of the situation and Bene Gesserit supremacy.
Yeah.
Because 10,000 years later, guess who's around? Oh, the Bene Gesserit. Guess who's not around? Whoever the fuck Desmond Hart is.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Shall we talk about Larry and Jihad? This was a through line I saw many times online, and I wanted to throw up this question from the Twitter account, The Siege of Sci-Fi.
Mhm.
They asked, what are the precise differences between Frank Herbert and Brian Herbert's But Larry and Jihad? And I saw this pop up quite a bit online, because I think people who have maybe only ever read the Frank books or only ever watched the Villeneuve movies are coming into Prophecy a little confused, especially by that flashback prologue scene where we saw robots fighting.
Yeah, one of the first shots of the show.
So which one of y'all wants to try and tackle this sort of Dune lore 101 question here for folks who might be wondering?
I don't know. Precise is a weird word because in the Frank Herbert, I guess, Dune books, it's not really something that you see unfold. It's only something that's referenced as like this historical event, like a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like necessarily like a machine uprising, like you think Terminator, like the machines got really intelligent and thought like, oh, we could do better than mankind. And so like we're now enslaved by the machines, or like a Matrix situation. It wasn't more like that. Like the Reverend Mother in the beginning of Dune says, once we gave ourselves over to machines in the hope that this would set us free, but that only permitted other men with machines to enslave us. So I think this will, the idea is this is a reference to mankind at one point being under like technocratic rule, and men in power of machines using those machines to manipulate and enslave like everybody else. So it's the men in power of the machines that's the actual threat, and not the machines themselves. But in the Brian Herbert universe, you kind of shift the focus to the kind of malicious, malevolent, intelligent machines. So I think that's the key distinction.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and I would add in that the other angle of it, and the thing that like Leto 2 talks a lot about, is that the threat was never the machines. It was the stagnation and the complacency that the machines enabled. People lost their humanity. They allowed pieces of like human life to be taken over by automation and machine protocols, and we lost that thing, and that's why it was so important that we reclaimed it. But again, the sort of broad critique of Brian's world building is that if it were literal humans enslaved by Erasmus, who's like torturing them and whatever, Plato would have had some stronger words to say about it than like, it was fine. It's like, okay. So it's clear that like, I'm pretty confident that Frank had this idea of like, it's stagnation, it's complacency, it's over reliance on technology without, and losing sight of maybe like the point of living, which is love and humanity and that.
That's definitely a necessary point to add, because in God Emperor of Dune, he kind of like recreates that, but without machines. So he like forces humans to live under stagnation and no change for thousands of years. And it creates this kind of sense of anxiety and restlessness within, I guess, like the human mega consciousness
Spirit,
or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Tomas has a comment here I want to throw up on screen. He says, I'm not familiar with the Brian Herbert books, but from the show, it seems like this Jihad is pretty much big robot goes boom, boom.
That's accurate. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really, when you read when you read any of Brian's books, it really is just like evil robots who also are like, I'm evil and a robot and I have no emotions, he said angrily or sadly, and I'm like,
hate humans.
Do you have emotions or do you not? Or like, it's super inconsistent, and they're basically just the worst, just the most 2D cutout villainous characters. Like Erasmus kind of goes through a finding humanity arc, kind of, but it's not good. It's not satisfying.
I'm laughing because I just remembered Ultra Spice.
Ultra Spice, yeah. Oh my god. Also, like the ocean, weren't there ocean worms, like ocean sandworms?
Bustle. Yeah, they create these ocean sandworms, and they have Ultra Spice inside of them, but you can't take it because it's poison. No one can survive it. That's the point.
It's a commentary on how weed has gotten strong over the last 40 years.
Incredible. Okay, let's switch gears again. I want to throw up another question that I found online quite a bit, and a lot of my coworkers were asking me about Saloa Secundus specifically. So I can't believe I have to say this out loud, but Reddit user Heavy Beef Juice asked on Reddit this week, why does Saloa Secundus look so nice in Dune Prophecy?
It's a simple question. I mean, it's a simple answer too. I mean, I talked about this in my review, but basically it was destroyed. I mean, Dune has always had this ecological messaging where it's like we can change planets through human activity if we abuse them. If you treat them well, it'll flourish and be beautiful and green. But if you treat it bad, it'll be Arrakis or Saloa Secundus. So basically, that's just what happened to Saloa Secundus over time. It was a planet that was abused, and by the time of Paul Atreides, it's a prison planet that's kind of equivalent to Arrakis in the fact that it's really hard to survive there. It's got really like difficult to traverse terrain, and they train their soldiers there on their prison planet. So
now I'm still working my way through some of Brian's books for the first time. Quinn, do you remember in Brian's lore when and how Saloa gets ruined, and like then when do the Sardaukar get started up?
I don't remember. Does it mention that specifically?
I have to imagine it does. He's written so many goddamn books.
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
I don't know either.
Chat, if
I
you
know.
Let us know.
Yeah, I know in the Dune Encyclopedia they talk about like the Sardaukar kind of came out of these tribes, these like varied tribes that live in this incredibly harsh planet that is only beaten out in harshness by a little known planet called Arrakis. But I don't think Frank ever really talked that much about what Saloa was in the far history. But just like Arrakis was once a watery, lush, beautiful planet in Prime canon, it also makes sense that harsh planets, to your point, Quinn, can be ruined. And when we see Getty Prime for the first time in Dune, we see it in the act of being ruined by House Harkonnen, who's just, industrial, very, very heavy industrial stuff. So it is a quiet tip of the hat to ecology and how important it is to protect our ecosystem.
Yep.
Sweet. It also looks so good. My God, it
looks
looks
so
so
good.
nice.
The visuals are stunning.
Every establishing shot of Salusa Secundus, I'm like, yeah, sign me up. That's where I want to live.
Right.
It's great.
As opposed to Wallach 9, which is very grim,
Bleak.
dark.
Right. Right. Yeah, very gray. Okay, I got another question for y'all from Reddit. This is from user Snoo9488. Snoo asks, why aren't the floating lamps considered thinking machines?
Glow globes. I always wanted one. I don't know. I mean, why isn't a lot of stuff considered thinking machines? You know, Frank
Yeah.
Herbert is
For
vague on describing how technology works, and that because it's not the point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is what it is. I don't know. We don't know how it works, so I can't really I don't have a definitive definition as to why isn't it considered a thinking machine? I don't know.
I'll say for fans of anybody who wants to go find the PDF of the Dune Encyclopedia, they have this very contrived and complicated paragraph that explains how glow globes can be programmed to follow you around, but they're using rudimentary on off switches and light sensors and simple mechanics. So there's no computer, there's no onboard. You're not going, hey Siri, turn on the glow globe at 10 a.m. There's no command like that. It's just rudimentary electronics. I think in Frank's universe, to your point, Quinn, it's not really the point what is and is not a machine. What is more important is if it's wresting away human agency. Yeah. And lamps are not. How dare you take the job of that fire holder? So generally it's fine in Frank's universe. Brian's universe is more the one, and it's a totally reasonable question because you have this Robo Gecko in episode 1. Everyone freaks out and goes, "Oh my god!" Meanwhile, there's flying cars and floating lamps and shit. It's
I mean, I had Transformers as a kid. They didn't transform on their own. I had to move pieces around, but that doesn't seem that deadly. But everyone freaked out about it.
Are you counting Furby as a Transformer?
About the robot gecko too, isn't it don't counterfeit the human mind, and thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind? How is the robot gecko in the likeness of a human mind?
I don't know. I think it seems like the kind of thing it's got too many moving parts, and they're like, ew, moving parts. Gross.
Yeah. And we have some great comments here about the glow globes. People really digging into the lore, specifically the Dune Encyclopedia lore. S.A. Spinks says, aren't they living organisms that create the glow within? Yeah, according to the Dune Encyclopedia.
Oh,
the
is that what
globes
it
are lit by microorganisms.
I didn't even know that.
From ECAS.
That's cool, actually.
Yeah, bioluminescent microorganisms from ECAS.
Yeah, so they're biological in nature, so thus they wouldn't be considered a thinking machine that has a mind of its own.
And even
Ben also goes into greater detail. He says, I believe the glow is from the organisms, but they move and tracking it's dispenser tech that tracks and moves around. So local Bluetooth is maybe fine. Bluetooth is kosher for Butlerians, but as soon as you get into more,
the second you try to airdrop, they're like, no. Yeah, the floating thing is a good point. We didn't mention that. They're Holtzman suspensor fields, so that's just it's just kind of par for the course, understood mechanics. So yeah.
I like the Redulian crystals that it's he's just thinking and it's writing it. That's so cool.
With the
I want that.
Oh,
Dictator.
Yeah. Oh, good call.
Yeah.
I keep looking at, I was looking at I've kept pausing the first episode of Prophecy and looking at the set dressing and wondering what the little bits and baubles are on all of the shelves. I'm sure they don't have time to get into movies. You have a whole prop department who their entire job is populating the world with little pieces. TV shows have that as well, but the pace is so much faster. I'm some of it though has got to be rooted in lore. It'd be fun to talk to whoever made all the set dressings and props for Prophecy.
Yeah. Okay, final thing I want to share here from the comments. Spinks jumps in again and says, glow globes are just advanced clap-on, clap-off tech. And as someone who loved those commercials, hell yeah. I'd love a clap-on, clap-off glow globe.
So nostalgic.
Yeah.
So nostalgic. Throwback to the 90s, folks. Okay, I have another question for y'all. This one's from Reddit that I found. This is from Reddit user Bakugo's gay friend, which
Uh-huh.
Leo, you had commented before the stream. Isn't that just Deku? For
Yeah, there's a
folks out there
couple of
who watch My Hero.
characters in My Hero who it definitely seem coded.
Yeah, Kaminari maybe. You know, like there's some.
Yeah.
He's got a little gay friend circle on that show for sure. Okay, a little My Hero Academia tangent. Okay, the question though is: so the Fremen interrupting spice production was a thing for thousands of years? Question mark.
Yeah, the timeline is
So I think
questionable.
seemingly the inherent question
Super
is like,
questionable.
no one fucking
Yeah.
figured this out for 10,000 years.
Yeah. I saw some of the like responses to that, and people are like, they're super elusive and stuff. But I think that dances around the fact that Brian and Frank had different ideas about
The
the
timeline is questionable. I mean, yeah, it is, because I would really have to like go back and look again and like dig in again. But I feel like in the Herbert Dune, in the Frank Herbert Dune encyclopedia timeline, that the Fremen had not been on Arrakis for 10,000 years. I don't think
No.
they had not.
No,
So
the migration doesn't even start. I was double checking the timeline the other day. The Zensuni migration, the Zensuni people who are the precursors to the Fremen, that didn't even begin until like, I think maybe 1,500 years afterward this show takes place.
that's what I thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, because it's way off. Like, so I don't know. This is what they're going with though. So I don't know what to say. It's because I mean, it's not their fault that Brian Herbert confused the timeline so much
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
made it
Yeah.
Right.
so.
So the answer is yes. The Fremen have been interrupting spice on the same planet in the same way for thousands of years, and the Imperium can't figure it out.
Not to mention, there are like multiple moments where people, you have thumpers and footage of the sandworm attacking revealed in the first episode to the Emperor. And I'm like, I mean, the sandworms are kind of legendary. Some people don't even believe they exist in like Dune canon. Some like the idea of thumpers and Fremen actually existing and working with another thing that's like completely like almost mythological in Frank's books. Desert
Even in
power.
the Bill News movies, it's like, oh, the mysterious Fremen and their desert
Yeah.
power, and what do they do? It's I mean,
we have footage of it from 10,000 years ago, so it's definitely a little confusing, and probably just a byproduct of the fact that because also in Brian's books he calls them the Freemen, like you're gonna drop a letter and smush them together over,
Tulaxa. He changes like a lot of
the
words.
precursor to Tleilaxu, or just like the Tlulaxa or whatever. Yeah,
It's
just
so
You need to
shifting
change
some
that word.
names around there.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another great question in the chat here from let me throw it up here, from Tomas. Tomas says, how do you guys feel about the possibility of Desmond using magic to burn people at the end? Is it a real possibility? If so, is there a satisfactory way to make this fit in the Dune universe?
Well, I mean, I guess the closest thing that we have to this kind of superpower would be like Mouse Tag, right?
Yeah.
Where where you have the honored Montres like really, really pushing him to the brink, and because he's like this weird product of Bene Gesserit breeding, like it awakens something that was like latent in the Atreides bloodline, and he becomes the Flash. And so that would be the closest thing to that in the Dune universe, to maybe like to a superpower type thing of that nature. But as far as like someone burning somebody alive with their mind, we've never seen anything like that before.
I've seen attempts, because this is very established in Brian's books, of like the sorceresses of Rosic who can do all sorts of stuff like that. Like they can fly and they can shoot psychic blasts. I've seen attempts to explain that with biology, that they are like gathering. They've learned how to gather static electricity and then discharge it in a big thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I guess. But
That's like a really midichlorians answer to a thing that we
Yeah,
all just were
exactly.
fine with being magic. Yeah.
yeah. So in Brian's universe, there are psychic powers, and we've talked about how like Desmond Hart could be like the son of a sorceress, and he has sorceress's blood, which means he's got extra powers.
That's what they don't do though.
But there's also the possibility of it being technological, which is I think probably more in line with the themes of this season. So we'll see.
We should just ignore all that sorceresses stuff for God's sake. Yeah, just pretend it
Yeah.
doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
I
really
like
does.
witches. I wrote a whole graphic novel about witches. Like I watched 8 seasons of Charmed. I watched the Sabrina witch show on Netflix. Like
Oh
I like
yeah.
witches, but
Yeah. Witches are
not
cool.
not like this.
And not like this. Also, again, it does complicate things when you have like there are all sorts of weird rationales that you have to start including to make it make sense with the original 6 series. Brian Herbert introduces the idea that Bene Gesserit can melt into shadows and become nearly invisible. And then we have multiple moments in the Dune series by Frank Herbert where, golly, that power would have been convenient. And then they just don't have it because you've introduced new powers decades after the book was finished, being written. It just doesn't always work out. I do like, so Ben commented that the gecko fears, this is just going back for a second because I think it's a good point, is that if this kid has a toy that advanced, who knows what else Richese is doing. And I think that's a good point. People don't need to necessarily freak out about a kid's toy, but if a kid's toy is representative of the sorts of things they've got around, then for sure you're like, oh, let's take a step back and actually be really pissed off about this.
Well,
So
you guys have
I think
flying
it's a good point.
machines, so we're even.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. Ben also has a great point here about Desmond's powers, which I think Quinn is in line with your theory. Desmond could just
Yeah.
be a Gola or Tleilaxu / Ixian creation, which would then explain his powers. That
I've
would
heard
be
some
one
people
way
say
to make it work in the Dune universe.
I've heard some people say thinking machine too, but I don't know how that will work out.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
I see, like part robot or something.
Yeah, like he's in like rebuilt, like he's cyborged like Claire B in Chowderhouse. I think it's
I
Claire B. What's his name? I don't remember.
Clairby,
Yeah,
the fucking bus
cyborg.
driver.
Wow, a deep cut.
Oh, my
Deep
favorite
cut.
character. Oh, that's great. Oh, I can't wait to talk about Clairby. Clairby's such a fun character. I did have a thought the other day. What if, so we've talked about how like Timothée Chalamet might appear toward the end of the series. What if we get Vorian Atreides?
Oh, is he?
What if he rolls up? Like, I don't know how, like, I think that would be really cool knowing that he's this sort of immortal Atreides that's like out there in space. But like, I was thinking like, oh, that could be a kind of a cool reveal in like episode 4, right? Or something like that. Might also solve the Kieran Atreides is kind of boring problem.
Maybe
Right.
he'll become more interesting in the next episodes. Who knows?
Here's hoping. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's hoping. Actually, while we're on the topic of Richese and their technology, Luna had a comment. One of our patrons, Luna in Discord, had a comment. Luna was doing some ADHD Googling while watching the show, and apparently the little machine that Pruitt Richese has is canon for House Richese, and so they are known to be sort of towing this line of the Balerian prohibitions against thinking machines.
Oh
And
yeah, that's
so
true.
that's pretty on brand for them, seemingly. Is that correct
Mhm.
as far as you guys know when it comes to House
Yeah,
Richese?
Richese's was totally like associated with technology, with thinking machines, and like yeah, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think so.
They were
If
associated with
memory
it to some degree, right?
if memory serves, Ix was sort of a farming planet, and Richese was the next door planet where it was all like scientists and technology and stuff. When the Butlerian Jihad got kicked off on Richese, or maybe from people from Ix or something, they took all of the smartest scientists from Richese and banished them to the farming planet on Ix, where they built up Ix to be the powerhouse that it is eventually.
Mhm.
I also, Googling it, or not Google, looking it up in the Dune Encyclopedia, Aurelius Venport is actually a descendant of Richesian people,
Oh, cool.
which is kind of interesting. He's the founder
Yeah.
of the Spacing Guild. So another kind of interesting connection to House Richese, because every time I see House Richese, I always think of Brian's stuff because Brian has so much about House Richese. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, Richese is a part of the Dune Encyclopedia and Frank's
Yes.
lore as well. It just kind of got left a little bit in the annals of history once Ix was established as the place where all of those smart people were banished.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen any mention yet of the gecko. I'm only about halfway through the encyclopedia's mentions of House Rechese. Rechese, as for Vertigo pointed out. Yeah, Rechese, with a nice marinara sauce. So
right.
yeah, I haven't.
Actually,
I
while
haven't
we're on the
seen
topic
gecko
of
yet, but-
Rechese,
Mhm.
Ben had another observation here. Do you guys think that House Rechese are the ones who stole the spice on Arrakis that Desmond Hart survived the attack from? Is there a bigger plot afoot?
I think maybe, or maybe I don't
That
know.
could make
I could see it.
sense.
That's like
They
plans
wanted to
within
manipulate
plans,
the
right?
emperor. Well, the Bene Gesserit noticed that, like, that he was asking for a wing in the emperor's palace because he wanted to kind of insist more power over the Lanzarad from um, Seleucus Secundus. So there's definitely a plot, and I don't. So that seems like it would follow that he had something to do with
Yeah,
this thing, so he can kind of force the emperor's hand a little bit. Like, look how bad your problems on Arrakis are
yeah,
getting. You need
yeah.
my help. Come on, let's do this marriage and let me live in your castle. And
Yeah.
Come on, just
Yeah.
let me live in your castle for a minute.
Yeah. I would love for there to be a greater plot afoot. I think that's very Dune, plans within plans within plans. And I feel like Desmond is clearly not completely a lunatic. Like, if he says there is an insurgency, a rising insurgency within the Imperium, and the Emperor needs to watch out. Yes, like, primarily, I think he's talking Bene Gesserit because he has a vendetta against them. But I would hope that there is an insurgency of some sort, right? Like, the great houses should just be like sitting on their hands doing nothing.
that did strike me as true when he said that, because I watched that scene several times, and I was thinking, like, should the emperor trust Desmond when he's saying this, or is he just trying to make him more paranoid? And I think that Desmond was speaking to some degree of truth. And I would like to see more involvement with the Lanzarad, because the Villeneuve movie, like, kind of, there's, you don't really see him at all, really. So I
Yeah,
would like to see the Lanzarad more. So that'd be cool.
they're
That
little.
would be cool.
They're pixels in the sky, and you go, "Those
Yeah.
are great houses from the Landsrat," and you're like, "Can we zoom in
Yeah.
on them?" No,
No.
no. Just trust
Yeah.
us. There's really big, impressive ships out there,
Right. I
full
would
of
love to
people.
see I agree. I would love to see like a meeting of the Landsrad, sort of like Star Wars Episode 3, right? Like Padme Amidala in the big Senate meeting.
Mm.
Like that sort of politicking would be, I think, really fun to see because it's core to the Dune universe.
Make
Let's
everybody
see.
look really cool and unique, because they're all in like different worlds, and they should all have their different vibe. They all look the same, I'm gonna be mad.
Yeah. Philip, I just wanted to, this is a bit of a side tangent. Philip in the chat says, Leo, I love when you do the fade Elvis voice. Please never stop doing it. Can you treat us, Leo?
Yeah, as he famously says toward the end of the part two, he goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, you fought well, Atreides. Ha, ha, ha,
Oh!
Vader Alpha,
Oh my god.
Stop thrusting those hips, Fade. God damn.
Vader Alpha." That's what he says as he's thrusting into the sunset. Yeah.
Hilarious. We have a comment from Spinks here as well. Spinks says, I just want to see the whales that have whale fur.
Hey, Spinks, and this is actually for Spinks right now. Spinks, type in chat. What do you think they're called? If you had to go out on a whim, like on a limb, what do you think the species of whales that have fur are called?
Yeah, give us
I
your
want
answer
you
in
to.
chat. Don't
I want
Google
you.
it.
We're not going to say what it is until we see your comment. Okay.
I think I know.
And I want you to remember that this is in a book written by Brian Herbert.
Yeah, we're talking about like in the books what it's called.
In the books, what it's called.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Also, Ben responded to Spinks here. Ben says, we will see them in the next episode or two. There's a season teaser after the first episode on Max that has a shot of a very large and furry whale-shaped tail. Okay.
Hmm.
That's fun.
Spinks
All
can
right,
see
Spinks,
some
we are awaiting your answer with bated breath. In the meantime, we have I think we have another question here. This one is from Uncomfortable Crocs, which is exactly how I think of Crocs. Do you think the Gom Jabbar is going to be related to the burning tech / power thingy?
I think people are saying this because it looks visually similar. The
Yeah.
vision of the hand burning to like what Paul Atreides sees in the David Lynch movie and what Paul Atreides sees in the Villeneuve movie. They always show the hand burning. But in the Vilna movie, she says pain by nerve induction, which
Yeah,
there's nothing being harmed. He's not actually being burned. It's just stimulating the nerves and
right.
just making pain.
Yeah.
So
And there's no visual after effect of it.
Mhm.
So while I think they're connected in like imagery, I think the reality of the lore tech, it's unrelated probably.
I agree.
Yeah, I
Although
agree.
I do like now that we know that those two kind of spire-like towers at the Bene Gesserit school on Wallach 9, now that we know that that's the school at Wallach 9, I'm like, they do look like two Gom Jabbar needles, which is very cool. And I'm going to take as us being in the show twice every time we see that building.
Love it. All right, Ben's got an interesting theory here about Raquela's visions from the start of episode 1. This is a bit long, so bear with me here. Ben says, I didn't really notice this in the first watch, but after a second watch, I think that Mother Raquela's vision is about a tyrant bringing about a reckoning. Raquela's vision is about a tyrant bringing about a reckoning, is directly about Mother Valia. He continues, they say Valia says she wants blind obedience and is taking pieces off the board willy-nilly, and then she sees the literal burning truth. So is
That'd be the
Raquela's
biggest bait
warning
and switch.
about
That'd be
Valia?
Wow.
such a bait and switch, but
I did just Google, and yeah, Emily has some baby blues, has some blue eyes that could be burning there in the darkness. Okay, Spinks, you've commented. I'll just tell you, they're called fur whales. So the whales with fur, they're called fur whales. You're welcome. They really dug deep for that species name.
Really
for
dug
sure.
deep.
They really
Yeah,
dug
and
deep.
another fun fact I just came across yesterday doing some research, considering the kind of names that Brian Herbert comes up with for things, there is a Jihad police in the books,
Oh,
and they are shortened to JIPOL,
Jaipol.
Jipol, like Jihad police.
so creative.
Ben was
Killing
going
me.
to say Furus Walius.
Furus Walius is not far off.
That's better. Honestly, that's better.
You know? Kevin J. Anderson too. You know, I'll never forget that Kevin J. Anderson wrote a sequel to A Christmas Carol called The Ghost of Christmas Always. So
What?
Get the
don't
fuck
What?
out
always
of
remember
here.
that. Yes. I was like just looking up his books on Amazon, and I'm like, The Ghost of Christmas Always. It's a literal sequel to A Christmas Carol. That's
The
So,
sequel
wow.
we never knew we still don't want.
Incredible. Okay, I found a. Sorry, folks, that we're bouncing around. I'm kind of like just finding these questions and responding to stuff in real time here. Going back to the Jihad, I found an interesting question that I think could lead to some fun answers from us. On Reddit, user Sufficient Current 50 asks, what would Frank Herbert's Butlerian Jihad look like if we were to get an adaptation on screen of Frank's Jihad? How do you think it would play out?
it would be titled 2024. I'm kidding. I mean, kind of. Maybe I'm not kidding.
Kind of, yeah. Are you kidding?
I
What do you
want to
got?
say that I think it would happen in courts, and I would think it would happen in the Landsrad, and I would think it would happen as a battle of the minds where people are arguing, we need to get rid of this, look at this, this, and this. And maybe there's like sentient artificial intelligence presence there going, we deserve to live too. Maybe there's some of that agency, but I really think it would be humanity deciding we need to purge for X, Y, and Z reason. And then there maybe is a fanatical like sweeping of, and then there are planets and systems that would say, no, I refuse. I know that the great houses have decided we are not the great houses. You're not going to put us back in the barbarian eras. And then you'd have war. And that would be maybe the battle and the bodies and the blood and all that stuff. That's how I would see it playing out, is the like, maybe similar to in the United States, if we ever had a reckoning with like gun rights, if they were like, no, we actually do need to take like assault rifles off the market. And then the people being like, not my guns. And then like, that would be,
Yeah.
and definitely not boom, boom, stompy robots.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
think
I
so.
like that. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yes, there certainly wouldn't be, in my vision of it, There certainly wouldn't be Terminator style robot wars. I think I really like the Dune Encyclopedia's explanation of how the Jihad exploded across the universe. There was an inciting incident, right? I believe it was Jahan Butler's daughter was killed because of a doctor AI decided the child could not be saved.
Yeah, it was
And
like
then,
yeah.
I don't remember the details exactly. I'd have to look it up again.
It was the head like surgeon of the hospital was an AI that decided that the baby's life was not was going to be so complicated by different birth defects that it was an act of kindness. It would be unethical to let it be born.
To let it
I
be,
do remember this.
But then
I totally remember this.
the mother's
So-
like, that's not your choice to make, blah blah blah.
And I love that as an inciting incident because I do think you need some sort of inciting incident upon which the religious fervor and then the political machinations can build and explode out of control.
That's a great point.
So
Yeah.
I think that would be like an incredible first episode of a Butlerian series that explores that, where we see the inciting incident, we see the heartbreak, we see the morally gray question there of, is it a mercy to kill this baby, or do we let it try and struggle through whatever type of life it may have? And is it up to this fucking AI to decide that? And then for me, it would play out, I agree, Leo, in courtrooms, but I think it would also play out in like churches. Because to me, the Butlerian Jihad is also so religiously motivated. It gets twisted into like this religious zealot hatred toward machines in my mind. And it becomes like we cannot give our hearts, minds, and souls, the human soul, over to an AI. This AI decided that the soul of this baby shouldn't have lived. We shouldn't be doing that. So
Yeah.
for me, I think there would be an inciting incident, and then we would see it play out politically, religiously, and then we would see like bad faith actors jumping in, right? People who would benefit from the Jihad exploding out. They get in there and they're stoking the flames, baby, you know? Like, yeah, fuck the robots. Woo!
The foam fingers.
But I think to make it actually complex, to your point, Leo, we would need people on the other side, the House Richeses of the world, being like, how are we as humanity going to survive without Google Maps? I can't get to the post office without Google Maps. You're telling me I can't use it anymore. And so there is this question of like, where is the line of technology?
Yeah.
You're being too zealous about this. Technology does good. It also does bad. How do we decide when enough is enough when it comes to tech? Some really great and very like poignant, modern, like contemporary day questions rise up out of that. And I think that is so much more interesting than they enslaved us. So of course we got to pew pew them with our laser guns.
I think, you know, in the conversation we had yesterday, but in general, I think you say computers, yes, of course. AI, yes, of course, this is a new thing. But it is on the same spectrum as like the printing press that took every book for hundreds of years was hand copied. And now your books are no longer hand copied. There's no person who made that book possible for you. And so how far back are we going to push this? It's funny because we are accidentally right now pitching a much more compelling show than anything Brian Herbert's ever written, because that would be so sick. It'd be so fun to see that argument really brought out, and I think modern audiences would really resonate with that.
Yeah,
especially with AI. You know, like these are questions we are going to in our lifetimes ask about fucking ChatGPT.
it's extreme.
How far is too much? Where is enough with that? I also like Uncomfortable Crocs comment here. The next Jihad must be against nightclub scenes in science fiction. Hear, hear. I'm all
They
in on
serve
that
no
Jihad. Let's
purpose.
fucking go.
Or they should at least generic-looking nightclub scenes in science fiction. Because if you're going to give me another I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, give me that nightclub. But you're right, like generic ones, for sure. I get that.
Yeah. Okay, we got a bit of a question here from Tomas, who's confused about sisterhood timeline stuff. Tomas asks, could you folks explain the timeline of Reverend mothers in the Dune HBO universe? I remember an episode of the podcast you guys explained about wild Reverend mothers, but it seems in the series the Mother Superior was the first Reverend mother in the HBO universe. did I get this wrong? So kind
No,
of
you're
clarity on like what's going on with Reverend Mother timeline stuff.
Yeah, HBO timeline and Dune Sisterhood timeline. Raquella is the first
She's the
awoken Reverend
Yeah.
Mother, and it was like an assassination attempt that went wrong, and she
She
survived.
survived the
by
poison.
metabolizing the poison with her stuff. So yeah, she is the first, and then it's like 200 years, and she's like getting to the end of her ability to just extend her life. Is when Dorothea is the second, and Valya's the third, or Valya's like the eighth or ninth or something like that. No, there's like 12. Anyway, it doesn't matter. A bunch of people get awoken after Dorothea, but Dorothea was the second. Who is her granddaughter in this show and also in Dune Sisterhood. So that
Yeah.
also makes sense.
Okay. So Leo is the order of ops for Reverend Mothers, then Raquella, first ever to do it, the OG,
Then
and then Dorothea, and then Valya. That's
Valya's-
the order of.
Yeah, Dorothea in Sisterhood, Dorothea immediately then wakens 3 more sisters to like join her
Oh,
side
okay.
because she's kind of
Okay.
launching an anti-machine campaign against Raquella. And once she awakens, she realizes that the Sisterhood's using computers. So she's like, I need to create a cell of like loyal, awakened Reverend Mothers who understand the world as I do. And so I think she ends up awakening something like 12 Reverend Mothers.
Oh, wow.
And then,
I see.
but she
so
also
they've like figured out the formula by then, basically?
she figures it out. She basically, kind of on a whim, Deus Ex figures it out. Ika,
Got
she makes the poison work. And yes,
She tries to get Valya to take it too, but Valya like doesn't immediately.
she tries to. Yeah, I mean, from Valya's perspective, it's double suicide because Valya's like,
she's
this has
coming
never
out.
worked before. Fuck off. So she pretends to take it, spits it out, and then when Dorothea's going through the agony on the ground, Valya just lays down and pretends to go through the agony as well.
Yeah, she like fakes it.
She fakes
Oh, nice.
it, and no one
That
notices.
is a tough thing to fake, you know?
Good actor. She
I'd
went to
much
drama
rather
school.
fake an orgasm than that. Jesus. Wow. Faking
when
the
you
agony,
guys-
not an easy thing.
When you guys were just talking about the butler and Jihad, I was trying to remember like something that Leto II says, where he says the target of the Butlerian Jihad was the focus of it was a machine attitude as much as the machines themselves.
Yes.
And he
yes,
says the
yes.
things we do without thinking. Machines allow us to do things without thinking, and things we do without thinking, that's the real danger. I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking about like a college student
Absolutely.
like being like, Chat GPT, write my essay, and then it writes like it like hallucinates something, and then now you failed your course because you've
Yeah.
attempted to do this without thinking and having a machine do it for you, and now you're screwed.
Yeah, which is a real thing schools are contending with. Not to blow
Yeah.
up my sister's spot, but she's in grad school and she just used ChatGPT to rush through an assignment last week, she told me.
Don't
And I was
do
like, girl, what are you in grad school for? Are you learning?
Isn't that the point of grad school, is to like
know.
actually do the work?
I
Yeah,
was just
she was like,
looking
it's
at
whatever,
something.
it's one assignment. And I was like, okay, sure.
Wow.
Butlerian, Jihad. Be good.
Jihad now.
Raina Butler disliked that message. Yeah.
Yeah, for real. Spinks has a fun question for us. What would you choose if you could see any Dune plot or concept realize on screen, either in a movie or a TV series?
Everyone knows what my answer is.
Oh,
what's
I mean,
yours?
say it. I mean,
Clairby the movie.
No, I want to see God Emperor of
God
Dune.
Emperor of Dune, that's
Yeah.
right.
Like, give me that.
When you've been shouting this
miniseries.
from the rooftops for years. Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
That's all I want.
I also think, because we talked a lot about that during our book club for God Emperor, I think like a God Emperor of Dune miniseries that is fully horror based. It's from Duncan's perspective, and
Yes.
and the whole time you are terrified of this giant human face that comes like out of the darkness and comes up with this like silvery hands, and he's like, "Hello, Duncan." Like that.
scene,
Yeah.
like the way he's like slowly turning on the lights, like slowly,
Yeah.
That
slowly,
scene-
so he
that
doesn't get too
scene.
creeped out.
And then Duncan
Yes.
slowly realizes he's actually surrounded by Leto's body. Like,
Uh,
Yeah.
it'd be so good.
It'd be so good. I mean, I honestly kind of want to try and write a spec script for God Emperor of Dune, because that is where I would open the whole fucking movie. Would be Duncan, Idaho, Jason Momoa walking into a dark room,
Shirtless.
shirtless. Yeah, six
Okay,
packs,
sweet.
shirtless. You know what? We're just hanging dong. Scene one, naked.
Full frontal.
Full
Opening scene.
frontal. And Like I would want this
You
movie
didn't
to
even do that
open
in
up
Game of Thrones.
specifically on that scene, him walking into a dark room, and then we hear this like godlike rumbling huge voice,
Yeah.
and we see that conversation play out that we do in the chapter, in a more condensed movie format. As it dawns on Duncan what he is talking to and who he is talking to, right? Don't even
Yeah.
reveal that this is an Atreides until like 5 minutes into the scene. Like, and then the lights are coming on, and then the fucking God Emperor's there. That would be such an incredible way to, I think, open a God Emperor of Dune
He
movie.
speaks to Duncan in like Paul
In
or
Paul's
Leito's
voice.
In
voice,
Paul's
right?
voice.
Yeah, it's
What?
like insane.
Yeah.
So you'd hear Timothy Chalamet's voice coming from the darkness, but it's a little bit off. It's a little wrong.
Okay,
Oh,
let's
that'd
So
be
good. A
excellent.
great pick, Quinn. A great pick. God Emperor on screen.
What about you,
What
Abu?
about you, Leo? What Dune
I asked
concept or
first.
plot? Oh, did you already answer? Oh, you
No,
answered Claire.
I asked first. What do you? What about you?
Oh, you asked me first. Okay. Okay. I mainly asked you because I wasn't ready yet. Let's
Okay,
see.
then I'll tell you what mine.
Okay, go ahead.
I actually very much feel so. Spinks commented random, but I really want to see Holtzman's arc on screen. And I was thinking about Holtzman maybe like 10 minutes ago.
do an
The whole
encyclopedia.
yeah, from the encyclopedia where he's like an ornithopter racer who gets like paralyzed, and then he is put into a computer or like into a artificial body, and then he like hacks the hospital and escapes, and then just like flies off into space as like a human machine forever, and then just
Forever.
comes back and drops DLC technology, and I'm like,
Just like inventing
So
shit
good.
in space.
I
It's so cool.
it's so cool. I really struggle to see how it could be adapted, like because a lot of that would just be him. So maybe it would be every episode is like a different pass by and how different cultures are, and you just get to see these very different worlds. But I think realistically, oh good lord, I had an the Impalaros.
Yep.
I want to see the
I was going to
Impalaros.
say, why haven't you brought up Impalaros yet?
The Impalaros, so it became a Dune tarot card, but the original idea was this highliner, or this it wasn't a highliner, it was a faster than light vessel, but they came in contact with like a pathogen in space that made them all lose their minds and
Okay.
believe that they were being chased by aliens.
Aliens.
So they're all hallucinating, going, "We're being chased down by aliens. Humanity is gone. Gun
Yeah.
it. Let's get the fuck out of here." And they pushed their ship to almost the speed of light. And so then they are forever
Time
traveling
dilation.
because there's time
Yeah.
dilation. So they're immortal now. And they're just, but I want to see
Crazy.
the like Dune, all like, people have got Holtzman shields. They've got like the Dune tech and stuff. But I want to see just a nice little compact, tight, spooky horror story where people are hallucinating. You're not sure if there are aliens or aren't. And then the final scene maybe is them approaching light speed, and like I don't know how you end
Yeah.
that satisfyingly,
Yeah.
but like that is a nice tight little plot that I would love to see adapted.
It's like in my mind, it's like a combination of Alien Romulus and what's that movie? What's that movie with
Cars
the time
2?
dilation and
Which one? Interstellar?
Interstellar? Thank
Interstellar,
you.
yeah, when they're on the planet and like they come
Yeah.
back and 12 years have passed, even though it was
Like
By the way, I
part,
was
part
gonna mention
horror,
Alien
part
Romulus.
horror from Alien, part Interstellar, time dilation, space stuff
Mm.
smashed together.
I was going to mention Alien Romulus when we were talking about the robots making decisions, because there's that part in Alien Romulus where that guy hates androids because there was that mining incident and the robot had to decide to kill like a certain amount of people and save like the other people, and he like really
Yeah.
hated Andy because of that. Something like that, totally inside the Butlerian Jihad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
For sure. My pick, I'm actually going to steal from Madison Thompson here. I was already thinking of it, so maybe it's not stealing, but I want to highlight Madison's comment. A Norma Semna biopic. I would just love an origin story of the Spacing Guild, Aurelius Venport, Norma Semna. We did an entire episode on this on the podcast, and to this day, of the like 200 plus episodes we've done, it's like a top 3 episode for me because it's so good. It has everything.
Yeah,
There's
that's
juicy
true.
romance, there's betrayal, there's politics, there's business, like there's like Succession style business scheming. You could really flesh that out, the origins of the guild, and Norma Semna and Aurelius Venport in particular as your two sort of anchoring main characters in a biopic style historical look at the Spacing Guild. I would love to see that played out, specifically the encyclopedia version of it.
I could also see like Norma as a sort of, like if we've seen Oppenheimer, where it's like him sort of like beginning to theorize the splitting of the atom and like how this could be applied, and like some of those more abstract moments. I could see Norma like realizing that void space is something that can be used and having this idea that spice will get her there, and then dropping into void space for the first time. And like that could be such an incredible moment for sure.
Yeah.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
okay,
or again to my earlier joke answer, Clairby road trip show, because Clairby needs to be have this.
Oh
spotlight.
yes, yeah. There was
Anyway.
a comment here. Who said that?
Yeah.
V for Vertigo said Clairby road trip show. Yeah.
Excellent.
Nothing said. Look, Star Wars had so many like kid spin-off shows. Nothing says we can't have a Dune kid spin-off show. Give me that Saturday morning Dune cartoon.
Yeah.
I'd love it. Okay, well, we're coming up here on the end of the stream. We want to wrap up shortly, so get your last questions in, folks, in the comments here. I did want to share one of the funniest comments from a patron we got in Discord during the live watch-along that we did for episode 1. Here, let me find it. I have it saved in here somewhere.
M dot.
M dot specifically, one of our patrons observed that Desmond Hart is basically just Timu Duncan Idaho, right? That's the vibe we're all getting.
I noticed that. Yeah, that's why I was saying Gola. I was like, yeah, you look like Duncan, so I just think Gola.
Thewish.com. Like we've got Duncan Idaho at home kind of thing.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We've got Duncan Idaho at home. So I thought that was really funny. Great job, M dot. You get the joke of the week for this episode. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Actually, while we're talking about Duncan, there is a question in here that's less prophecy related, but maybe we hit on it quickly. Ryan asks, do we think Jason Momoa is a good Duncan, and could he pull off Duncan Gola? Didn't mind him in part 1, but the role does significantly change in future books.
Well, I've always had the same opinion, which was that like I like Jason Momoa, but I don't think they have to stick with Jason Momoa if they were going to do the whole thing. Like,
okay.
I think that if he's a clone, then he can be a younger version of himself. He could be altered in some way. I don't think they would have to stick with the same actor, but that's just my opinion. I think you could recast potentially, but if they want it, I don't know.
I think he's fine. I think Duncan Idaho as a character, I kind of like, it's a love-hate relationship, right? Like Duncan Idaho in God Emperor of Dune is kind of a piece of shit the whole time. Yeah. And he's kind of like a meathead who doesn't really understand what's going on and is just so like in his own head about things. So I don't like, I think as hate would be the most challenging is him as the Zen-Sunni philosopher, him as the sort of intellectual who's kind of carrying these conversations with older Timothée Chalamet. But I think if he can do that, I've only seen Momoa in a few things, and it's always been the sort of like in the Aquaman movies, which have not great scripts and awful direction. He's fine. So I don't know. I think he's fine. He's also like a world-class rock climber, and famously, Duncan Idaho needs to be a very good rock climber, like
Everyone
a very
good,
like a so good rock climber. Like he's so good. Like you go to Pornhub.com and you're like rock climbing, like that's Jason Momoa's skill. So the fact that Jason Momoa has that already, and then is this like towering kind of strong-looking guy, I think he's got what it takes. I don't know that the Zen-Sunni scenes would be hard, but that's where a good director could get a good performance out of him, I think.
Yeah. I think with the right coaching and with the right script, Momoa does have the juice. I think he could do it. I think he's just worked on a lot of projects where he has neither of those things, and thus we see the worst version of him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he gets it's both the pigeonholing effect of Hollywood, where you play the himbo in one thing and people go, we need a himbo. Oh, get him, and like that's just what it is. Yeah, exactly. Himbo stuff.
See, my thing is, although I like Jason Momoa, he was never like my Duncan, Idaho, and he
Oh.
fits in the Villeneuve movie. It's fine, but he's never like my idea of like Duncan, Idaho. Like he's not to me. When I think of Duncan, Idaho from the Frank books, I don't see Jason Momoa's character. It's almost like a
Who
different
do you
character
picture?
to me. I can't do this thing with the actors because I don't know actors'
Right.
names.
Yeah.
So like I don't know.
I'm the same. I hate doing that too. Everybody's like, who would you cast in so and so in Messiah?
Whoopi
And I'm like,
Goldberg as Duncan, Idaho.
I don't know if this is just me. I'm curious how you guys read books. When I read books, I just can't picture faces. People are just blank nothings in my mind. Like
I
even
can
if they are
sometimes-
described in the book, I cannot picture them at all.
Yeah, I don't visualize the characters as much as I'll like if I'm given details about them, they'll kind of be there for a minute in my head, but then like they fade, and it's more just an accumulation of their behaviors.
Yeah. I think I'm mostly the same way. Like sometimes I'll maybe have a face, but usually not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. Faces are tough for me. So whenever people ask like, who would you cast? I'm just like, I don't know. I had no idea who I was even imagining reading the book.
That being said, I it might have a little bit to do with the authors, right? Because I think there are a lot of authors who just like leave descriptions behind because it doesn't really matter that much what people look like. And there have been books I've read where they keep driving home his like, and then he like tossed his curly brown hair, and then like they just keep repeating that kind of stuff, and it's never great. I'm never
George
like,
R.
yeah.
Martin with the Song of Ice and Fire books is insane with his descriptions, like of everything,
true.
like people, of like just oh my god,
That's
he's
true.
insane with descriptions.
So that's a good example of someone who did it well, where like I think he describes his characters really deeply, and then you get a lot of that, and then it's also good. I also, let's see, we had another comment that I think we should pull up. Philip DeRenzo, the Harkonnen Atreides one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good question.
Basically, yes.
Wait, let's read it first for the people who will listen to the audio version of this. Philip asks, are the Harkonnens and Atreides mortal enemies at the time of the show, or are they still cordial at this time?
Yeah. And you've read the books recently too, Quinn. How would you answer this question?
I mean, I would say that the feud is ongoing at this point in time. So
yeah, so the important thing to note, Philip, is that like the Battle of Corrin, Abelard Harkonnen like kind of ditched Vorian and his forces at a moment where they needed their support. So Vorian won in spite of Abelard's forces leaving. Now, again, there's a big theme in Dune is like who wrote the history and who's really telling the truth in all of this. And generally, it's understood that the Harkonnens did kind of abandon the fight. So Atreides, Vorian kind of called him out against his, and Vorian didn't even really want to because he liked House Harkonnen quite a bit. But he's like, yeah, he fucking left, and because of that, the Emperor was like, disgrace this house. They're no longer a great house. Send them to Lankavale, this shitty icy planet. And House Harkonnen for hundreds of years are kind of like fueling this feeling of we deserve to be a great house, and they lied. They did not tell the truth. Vorian Atreides is a liar, and he basically threw us under the bus. So already by the time of Valia Harkonnen, Valia and her in the book and her brother Griffin and Tula, they hate House Atreides. And a big part of Sisterhood of Dune is her being like, we need to recover to where we were before the Atreides fucked us. And then Vorian Atreides shows up and she's like, hold up, I'm going to kill this Atreides. So, we'll see how she reacts to Kieran Atreides. And if she, we'll see kind of how that happens. We have yet to see, an Atreides character meeting a Harkonnen character in Prophecy. So we don't know if this is going to be something that's like forefront for the showrunner and for this story. But
there seems to be some differences between like this iteration of Valia versus like the book version. I know it is like she's removed 30 years, but like even in the flashback, there were some things like her relationship to Mother Rakella that are like, I feel like pretty different.
Yeah. Much more loyal to the Sisterhood. In the book, it feels like she's much more Harkonnen first.
It's all about the Harkonnen
second. And it's kind of reversed in the show. Good question, though, Philip.
Yeah.
Okay, I think let's end it there on that question by Philip. Really great stream. Quinn, thank you once again for joining us. Such a pleasure to have you. Oh, my God. This cough. Guys, I've been sick for like fucking 3 weeks. Okay.
Oh, no.
Let me take that again. We'll clean up that edit. movie magic, folks. Quinn, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you in these conversations and to have you share your immense Dune knowledge with us and our listeners.
Thanks for having me on. I could love talking to you guys anytime.
Sweet. Yeah.
Leo, do you want to run through reading the outro so we can?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, before you go, dear listeners, and I see some comments in chat, could listen to us all day. Does the stream have to end? Asks Ben. It does.
Guys, we'll be back next week, next Thursday.
We'll be back. Same time, and this will be
time
up for people to hear. Now, before we go, we want to remind you of some ways to support what we do here at Gom Jabbar and ways of keeping in touch with us. The two best ways to support us is one, to become a patron over at patreon.com/GomJabbar. Oh my God, the link animated on screen. And to get yourself some Dune-themed swag from our merch store, GomJabbarShop.com. I've been sipping from my Gom Jabbar needle pint glass today, which is very fun. So check out those links. They're going to be in the show notes. Also, we love to hear from you. So either join us for these live streams, join our Discord, chat with us there, or send us an email. Email is gomjabbarpodcast@gmail.com. You can send us your thoughts, your questions, pictures of your cute pets. And as the pop-up on the screen says, we now also accept one-time donations. So if you have subscription fatigue, or if you have too much junk in your life and you don't want extra stuff, you can just send us a financial donation if you so desire. Ben's got a hoodie on the way. Can't wait for it to arrive. Which one did you get? Knife, chip, and shatter? Something like that?
Oh, I love that design.
The knife, chip, and shatter one.
As a closing goodbye, Leo, can you do the Fade Rotha voice one more time? The folks are asking. They love it.
Leo, fine. It's sort of Johnny Bravo also. It's like, fuck. What hell, Atreides?
Can you say the mind of man is holy in Fade Rotha?
The mind of man is holy. Fade.
Oh gosh. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for hanging out in the live chat, Quinn. Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem.
We will see you all next week for episode 2 of Dune Prophecy, and more episodes and more coverage and more streams. Until then, bye.
Bye, everybody.